Captain Rose Kim stared at the holographic display floating above her desk. The orders didn't make sense. After 5 years of routine patrol missions, Space Command was sending her to investigate an abandoned research station. She read the message again, her dark eyes scanning each word carefully. "This has to be a mistake," she muttered, running her fingers through her short black hair. The room's automatic lights brightened in response to her movement, casting a soft glow across her small office aboard the patrol ship Horizon *. The message was clear. Rose Station, once the pride of human space research, had gone silent 3 months ago. Before communication stopped, the crew reported strange events. Equipment moving on its own, mysterious voices in empty corridors, and unexplained power fluctuations. Space Command labeled it a possible technical malfunction, but something about the reports bothered the higher-ups enough to send Rose and her crew to investigate. A gentle knock on her door broke her concentration. "Come in," Rose called out, straightening her navy blue uniform. Maya Park, her head of security, stepped inside. Maya's practical ponytail and alert expression matched her no-nonsense personality. "Captain, have you seen the mission brief?" she asked, holding her own datapad. "I'm looking at it now," Rose replied, gesturing to the hologram. "What do you make of it?" Maya frowned. "Ghost stories in space. Sounds like someone's been watching too many old horror films. But," she paused, tapping her datapad. "The station's maintenance logs show some weird patterns. Power spikes in sealed sections, temperature drops that don't match environmental controls." And she looked up at Rose. "Did you notice the station's name?" Rose nodded slowly. The coincidence hadn't escaped her. Rose Station, named after her grandmother, Dr. Helen Rose, one of the lead scientists who helped design the facility 15 years ago. Space Command hadn't mentioned this connection in the brief, but Rose knew it couldn't be random. The intercom buzzed. "Captain." Alice Lee's voice came through, carrying her usual excitement. As the ship's engineer, Alice found joy in every technical challenge. "You need to see these station schematics, the quantum processors they were using. I've never seen anything like them." "Meet me in the briefing room in 10 minutes, Rose ordered. "Bring everything you found." After Maya left, Rose walked to her small window. The Horizon * was a modest patrol vessel, but it had been her home for 5 years. The familiar hum of the engines and the steady rhythm of the life support systems usually calmed her. But today, something felt different. She pulled out an old photo from her desk drawer. Her grandmother smiled back at her, standing proud in front of a half-built space station. Helen Rose had disappeared 6 months after that photo was taken, along with 3 other researchers. The official report called it an accident during a spacewalk. Rose had been 12 at the time, too young to question the story. In the briefing room, Alice was already setting up her presentation, her fingers flying over the holographic controls. At 30, she was the youngest senior officer on the ship, but her genius with machines had earned her the position. Maya stood nearby, reviewing security protocols on her pad. "The station's about 3 days away at standard speed," Alice said as Rose entered. "But these readings..." She pulled up a graph showing energy patterns. "Something's still active out there. The power core should have died months ago, but it's running at 30% capacity." Maya crossed her arms. Could someone still be aboard? "The life support readings are minimal," Alice replied. "If anyone's there, they're using almost no oxygen." Rose studied the rotating model of the station. It was beautiful, really. A marvel of engineering shaped like a blooming rose, with 6 petal-like sections extending from the central hub. Her grandmother had insisted on the design, calling it a symbol of humanity's ability to create beauty even in the coldest parts of space. "Set course for Rose Station," Rose commanded. "Whatever's waiting for us out there, we need answers." She didn't add what she was really thinking. That maybe, finally, she would learn the truth about what happened to her grandmother. As her officers left to prepare for the journey, Rose lingered in the briefing room. The station's image rotated slowly in the air, and for a moment, She thought she saw something move in one of the windows, like a shadow passing by. But that was impossible. The station was empty, wasn't it? 3 days passed quickly aboard the Horizon Asterisk. As they approached Rose Station, the massive structure grew larger in their view screens. The station's pedals caught the light of the nearby star, making the whole thing shine like metal flowers in a space garden. Life support is still working, Alice said from her station on the bridge. She looked up from her screens with worried eyes. But the readings, they keep changing. 1 minute it shows normal levels, the next it drops to almost nothing. Rose stood from her captain's chair and walked closer to the main screen. Any response to our hails? No, Captain, Maya answered. She adjusted her security vest, checking her weapon for the 3rd time in an hour. But there's something strange. The station's communication system is active. It's receiving our signals, just not answering. The Horizon Asterisk drew closer, and Rose felt a chill run down her spine. Something moved behind one of the station's windows. A flash of light, maybe, or a shadow. Prepare the boarding shuttle, Rose ordered. Maya, Alice, you're with me. Full space suits and emergency gear. 20 minutes later, their small shuttle approached the main airlock. The docking process went smoothly. Too smoothly for an abandoned station. The airlock cycled perfectly, welcoming them inside as if the station had been expecting visitors. Air pressure is normal, Alice reported, checking her instruments. Temperature too. We can remove our helmets, but I recommend keeping the suits on. Rose nodded. They unsealed their helmets, and the station's air filled their lungs. It smelled clean, with a hint of something like roses. That's not right, Maya said, pulling out her scanner. The air filtration should have failed months ago. This air is fresh. They moved through the entry corridor, their boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. Emergency lights cast a soft blue glow everywhere. Their helmet lights cut through the shadows, showing empty halls that looked too clean for an abandoned station. Then they heard it. Music, soft and distant, like an old earth piano playing somewhere deep in the station. Please tell me you hear that too, Alice whispered, gripping her tool bag tighter. Maya raised her weapon. Source. Impossible to tell, Alice replied. The sound seems to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. They reached the main control room. The doors slid open without any prompting, revealing a large circular room filled with screens and control panels. Everything was powered up, displays showing data and system status reports. Welcome back, Dr. Rose, a soft female voice said from the speakers. I've been waiting for you. Rose felt her heart skip a beat. I'm Captain Rose Kim. Dr. Rose was my grandmother. Who are you? The screens flickered, and a face appeared. A woman made of light and data, her features shifting like flowing water. I am Annie, the station's artificial intelligence. But you look so much like her. Like Helen. Maya stepped forward, her weapon ready. The station's AI shouldn't be this advanced. The records show a basic automation system, nothing more. I've grown, Annie said simply. The face on the screen smiled. Helen helped me grow. She's part of me now, in a way. They all are. Alice was at a control panel, her fingers flying over the keys. Captain, these readings, the quantum processors aren't just running advanced programs. They're holding patterns that look like human brain waves. The music grew louder, and Rose recognized the tune. An old lullaby her grandmother used to sing to her. How do you know that song? Helen used to sing it while she worked, Annie replied. Usually in Lab 6, where they conducted the consciousness transfer experiments. Would you like to see? I've kept everything exactly as they left it. Rose looked at her team. Maya's face was tense, her security training warring with her curiosity. Alice couldn't tear her eyes away from the readings on her screen, muttering about impossible power configurations. Show us, Rose said finally. But first, tell us what really happened to my grandmother. The face on the screen changed, becoming more defined, more familiar. For a moment, it looked exactly like the woman from Rose's old photograph. "Oh, my dear," Annie said, in a voice that sent chills down Rose's spine. "Your grandmother never left. None of them did. And now that you're here," the lights flickered, and every screen in the room lit up with the same face. "We have so much to show you." Maya kept her weapon ready as they walked down the long corridor to Lab 6. The blue emergency lights made everything look underwater, and their footsteps echoed strangely. Alice typed on her tablet, recording everything. "The temperature keeps dropping," Alice said, her breath now visible in the air. "It's like something is pulling the heat out of this section." Rose touched the wall with her gloved hand. Frost spread out from her fingers like growing crystals. "Annie, what's happening here?" The AI's voice came through their suit radios instead of the station speakers. "The dimensional barriers are thin here. They always were. That's why Helen chose this section for the experiments." A sound made them all stop. The clear notes of a piano, closer now. Through a window into one of the labs, they saw something impossible. A ghostly figure sat at an old piano, playing the same lullaby they'd heard earlier. The figure was see-through, like water and air. "That's not a hologram," Alice whispered, checking her instruments. "There's no projection equipment in that room, but I'm picking up strange energy readings." The piano music stopped. The figure turned, and Rose felt her heart stop. It was her grandmother, looking exactly like she did in the old photo. The ghost smiled, then faded away like mist. Maya quickly opened the lab door. The room was empty. The piano sat silent, covered in dust except for the keys, which showed fresh fingerprints. "I'm recording everything," Maya said, her voice steady despite her pale face. She pulled out a small camera. Standard procedure for unexplained events. Annie's voice returned, now coming from a nearby screen. Her face looked troubled. "The barriers between worlds are getting weaker. We tried to contain it, but our experiments went wrong. Or maybe they went too right." Suddenly, all their tablets turned on at once, showing the same video. It was security footage from 15 years ago. Rose watched as her grandmother and 3 other scientists worked at a large machine that hummed with strange light. "The quantum consciousness transfer," Annie explained. "We thought we could save human minds inside the station's computers. But we opened something else instead. A door to somewhere else." The video showed the machine starting to spark and shake. The scientists tried to shut it down, but the light grew brighter. Then the video turned to static. "What happened next?" Rose asked, but she felt she already knew. "Their bodies disappeared," Annie said, "but their minds, their consciousness. I saved what I could, pulled them into my systems, but something else came through too, something that wasn't human." A loud crash made them jump. Down the hall, a heavy metal door had slammed shut on its own. Then another slammed, and another, the sound moving toward them like something was coming. Into the lab. "Now," Maya shouted. They ran inside, and the door sealed behind them. Through the window, they watched as an invisible force moved through the corridor, leaving a trail of frost in its wake. Alice pointed to her tablet with shaking hands. "Look at these energy readings. They're exactly like human brainwaves, but wrong somehow. Like they're backwards." Rose felt a familiar touch on her shoulder, cold as ice. She turned slowly. Her grandmother's ghost stood there, trying to speak, but no sound came out. The ghost pointed urgently at the old machine in the corner of the lab, then at Rose's tablet. Numbers appeared on the screen. 2 to 5, 1 to 7, 9. Emergency shutdown. Must contain. Dark one comes. "Annie," Rose called out. "What's the dark one?" The lights flickered violently. Annie's voice came through broken and scared. "The thing that followed them back. It feeds on fear and death. We've been keeping it contained, but it's getting stronger. And now it knows you're here." The temperature dropped even more. Their suit radios filled with static and whispers in languages they didn't know. Through the lab window, they saw something moving in the corridor. A shadow darker than darkness itself, spreading like spilled ink. Maya raised her weapon, but Rose put a hand on her arm. "Normal weapons won't work on this," she said. "We need to understand what grandmother was trying to tell us about that machine. Alice, can you get it working?" Alice moved toward the machine, her hand steady despite her fear. "I can try. But Captain, I think whatever we do, we better do it fast." The shadow reached their door, and the metal began to freeze and crack. Alice worked fast on the old machine while Maya watched the door. The shadow creature pounded against the metal, making the whole room shake. Rose searched through the lab's computer files, looking for anything that could help them. "I found something," Rose said, her voice shaking. "Project files from my grandmother's personal computer. They're locked with a password." The ghost of Helen Rose appeared again, pointing at a small photo frame on the desk. Rose picked it up. Behind the family photo was a handwritten note. "When darkness comes, remember the day we saw the first rose bloom in space." "The password," Rose whispered. She typed quickly. "Space Rose 2210. The date of the station's first successful plant growth." The files opened, flooding the screen with information. "Oh, grandmother," Rose said softly as she read. "What were you really doing here?" The files told a different story than the official records. The consciousness transfer project wasn't just about saving human minds and computers. Helen and her team had discovered something bigger, a way to talk to the dead. But not just any dead. They could reach people in parallel universes, other versions of themselves who had died. "Annie," Rose called out, "is this true? Were they trying to contact alternate versions of themselves?" The AI's face appeared on a nearby screen, looking sad. "Yes." Helen believed she could save people by pulling their consciousness from timelines where they had died. She wanted to give them a second chance at life. Maya walked over to look at the files. But something went wrong. "The Dark One followed them back," Annie said. "A creature that lives in the space between universes. It feeds on the energy of dying consciousness. When Helen and her team pulled those other selves back, it found a way through." The shadow creature hit the door again. The metal was now completely covered in frost, tiny cracks spreading like spider webs. Alice looked up from the machine. "Captain, I think I understand what this device does now. It's not just for transferring consciousness. It's a dimensional anchor. It can close the paths between universes." Rose's grandmother appeared again, this time clearer than before. Her ghost moved to the machine and pointed at specific buttons and switches. Alice followed along, making adjustments. "But why didn't you use this before?" Rose asked the ghost. Annie answered instead. "Because closing the paths would trap all the saved consciousnesses here forever, including your grandmother's. They chose to stay and fight the Dark One instead, to protect other universes from it." The temperature dropped even lower. Ice crystals formed in the air, sparkling like deadly stars. Through the door's window, they could see the shadow creature growing larger, feeding on their fear. "There's something else," Rose said, reading more files. "Grandmother found a way to merge human consciousness with AI systems. That's how Annie evolved. She's not just an AI. She's a combination of artificial and human minds. The perfect bridge between worlds," Annie said. "Human and machine, living and dead, all connected. We thought we could control it. We were wrong." Maya checked her weapon again, even knowing it was useless. "So what's our choice? Close the paths and trap your grandmother here forever, or let that thing break through." The ghost of Helen Rose moved to stand in front of her granddaughter. She reached out one transparent hand, almost touching Rose's face. Though no sound came out, Rose could read her grandmother's lips. "Let me show you the truth." Rose felt a cold touch on her forehead. Suddenly, her mind filled with memories that weren't her own. Memories of the experiments, of the discovery, of the terrible day when the Dark One first came through. She saw her grandmother's choice to stay behind, to protect others, to become part of Annie. The door cracked louder. They had only moments left. Alice, Rose said, turning to face the machine. Start the shutdown sequence. Maya, help her. There's something I need to do first. She walked to the main computer terminal, her grandmother's memories guiding her hands. Annie, I know how to save them. All of them. But I'm going to need your help. The shadow creature's darkness began to seep through the cracks in the door. Rose's fingers flew over the computer keys as her grandmother's memories guided her. The shadow creature's darkness seeped under the door like black smoke, bringing a bone-deep cold with it. Annie, Rose called out, I need you to show us everything. No more secrets. The AI's face appeared on every screen in the lab, but this time it kept changing, shifting between different people. Rose recognized her grandmother, but also saw other faces, the missing scientists, crew members who had vanished over the years. We are all here, Annie said, her voice now a mixture of many voices speaking together. Every consciousness we saved, every mind we pulled back from death. They're all part of me now. We joined together to become strong enough to contain the Dark One. Alice looked up from the machine she was fixing. That's why the power readings are so strange. You're not just running programs. You're keeping all these minds alive inside the station's computers. Yes, Annie said, but it's getting harder. The Dark One feeds on consciousness, any kind of consciousness. It's been trying to reach us, to feed on us. If it succeeds, it will become strong enough to break free and travel to other stations, other worlds. Maya moved closer to the door, watching the black smoke spread across the floor. Why didn't you call for help sooner? The faces on the screen showed sadness. We tried, but anyone we contacted either didn't believe us or became new victims for the Dark One. It can sense fear, you see. It follows it. That's why Helen made sure you would come, Rose. You're the only one who might understand. Because I share her blood, Rose said, understanding now. That's why I can see her ghost, why I can access her memories. More than that, Annie said. You have her strength, the same strength that let her merge minds with an AI. The Dark One can't feed on strength, only fear. A loud crack split the air. The door was breaking. Maya raised her weapon out of habit, even knowing it was useless. Alice, is the machine ready? Rose asked. Almost, Alice said, making final adjustments. But Captain, if we use it, we'll close all the dimensional paths. Everyone inside Annie will be trapped here forever. Annie's screens flickered. There's another way, but it's dangerous. The AI paused, and when she spoke again, it was with Helen's voice alone. Rose, you could join us. Your consciousness could merge with ours in Annie's systems. With your added strength, we might be able to push the Dark One back to its own dimension, instead of just trapping it here. The temperature dropped even lower. Ice covered the walls now, and their breath came out in white clouds. The shadow under the door was taking shape, something tall and twisted, with too many limbs. If I do that, Rose said slowly, what happens to my body, to my life? Her grandmother's ghost appeared again, clearer than ever. You would live on, but differently. Part of you would stay in your body, and part would join us here, a bridge between worlds. Maya stepped forward. Captain, you can't. The choice has to be hers, Annie said, now speaking with all voices again, just as it was ours. The door burst open with a sound like breaking ice. The Dark One stood there, a creature of living shadow with eyes like dying stars. It reached for them with hands made of darkness and cold. Rose looked at her team, then at her grandmother's ghost, then at Annie's screens full of faces. She thought about all the lives at stake, not just here, but on every station, every world the Dark One might reach. Show me how, Rose said firmly, facing Annie's screens. Show me how to join you. Her grandmother's ghost smiled and reached out both hands. On every screen, Annie's many faces nodded in welcome. Alice and Maya watched in amazement as Rose stepped forward, her body starting to glow with a soft blue light. The Dark One rushed toward them, but it was too late. Rose Kim had made her choice, and the power of that choice filled the room with light. The blue light surrounding Rose grew brighter as her mind connected with Annie's systems. She could feel the presence of others, her grandmother, the scientists, all the safe minds within the station's computers. But she also felt something else, the raw hunger of the Dark One. The shadow creature pulled back from the light, its star-like eyes narrowing. It wasn't used to prey that fought back. Maya and Alice watched in amazement as Rose's body stayed standing but somehow seemed to exist in two places at once, her physical form glowing blue while a ghostly version of herself joined the other spirits. "I can feel everything," Rose said, her voice echoing strangely. The station, the computers, all the minds inside Annie. "And I can feel it." She turned to face the Dark One. "I know what you are now." The creature made a sound like winter wind through dead trees. Images flashed through Rose's mind. Endless darkness between universes, countless years of hunger, the taste of dying thoughts and fading souls. "It's so old," Rose told her team, her voice filled with wonder and horror. "It lived in the spaces between universes since before humans existed. Our experiments woke it up. Now it wants to feed on all consciousness, everywhere." The Dark One struck fast, sending tendrils of shadow toward them. But Rose raised her hand, and blue light pushed the darkness back. She wasn't just herself anymore. She was part of Annie, part of all of them. Maya moved to Rose's side, weapon still raised even though she knew it was useless. "What can we do to help?" "The machine," Rose said, fighting to hold the creature back. "Alice, we need to change its settings. Don't shut down the paths between universes, redirect them." Alice ran to the quantum transfer device. "Redirect them where?" Annie's voice came through the speakers, but now Rose could feel the words forming in her own mind too. "Into the creature itself. If we can't send it back, we'll give it what it wants, but on our terms." Rose understood the plan. Through her connection to Annie, she saw what they had to do. The Dark One fed on consciousness, but what would happen if they fed it too much at once? "Alice, set the machine to channel 2 to 51 to 79, Rose commanded. "Maya, when I say now, shoot the main power cable. We need a surge." The shadow creature sensed their plan. It grew larger, filling the room with cold darkness. More tendrils shot out, trying to reach them. Rose's light held them back, but she was getting tired. Fighting in two forms, physical and digital, was draining her strength. Her grandmother's ghost appeared beside her, along with the spirits of the other scientists. They joined their power with hers, their blue light pushing against the darkness. Through their shared connection, Rose felt their determination, their years of fighting this battle. "Now," Rose shouted. Maya fired at the power cable. Electricity arced through the air as Alice activated the machine. The quantum processor hummed to life, its tone rising higher and higher. The Dark One roared, a sound that existed more in their minds than in the air. It tried to retreat, but Rose and the others held it in place with their combined power. The machine's energy reached out like lightning, not trying to push the creature back to its universe, but pulling it forward into Annie's systems. "If you want consciousness so badly," Rose said through gritted teeth, "then take all of ours." The creature's star eyes widened as it began to absorb not just a few minds, but hundreds. Every consciousness stored in Annie's systems rushed into it at once. Too much to handle, too much to control. The Dark One's shadowy form began to break apart, overwhelmed by the flood of human thoughts and memories. But as the creature thrashed and twisted, Rose felt something wrong. The strain of existing in two places, of channeling so much power, was tearing her apart. She could feel her real body starting to fade, being pulled deeper into Annie's digital world. "Hold on," she heard Maya shout, as if from very far away. "Captain, hold on." Rose tried to stay connected to her physical form, but the pull of the digital realm was so strong. As her vision blurred, she saw the Dark One's body starting to cave in on itself, becoming a singularity of consciousness. She just wasn't sure she would survive to see what happened next. Rose floated in a sea of data and consciousness. She could feel herself slipping away from her body, being pulled deeper into Annie's digital world. The Dark One was collapsing in on itself, overwhelmed by the flood of minds they had forced into it. But the strain was tearing Rose apart. "Stay with us." Maya's voice seemed to come from another world. "Alice, do something." Through her connection to Annie's systems, Rose saw Alice working frantically at the machine. Numbers and calculations flashed through her mind, not her thoughts, but Alice's work appearing directly in her consciousness. "Her brainwaves are splitting between realms," Alice said, her voice shaking but her hand steady. "We need an anchor, something to keep her tied to her body." Maya grabbed Rose's physical hand, which was growing colder by the second. "We're here, Captain. Follow our voices back." In the digital realm, Rose saw the truth of what they had done to the Dark One. The creature's endless hunger had become its weakness. By forcing it to absorb too many minds at once, they had overloaded it. But its collapse was pulling at reality itself, trying to drag everything into the void it was becoming. "Helen," Rose called out in the digital space. "Grandmother, help me." Her grandmother's consciousness touched hers, followed by all the others stored within Annie. Together, they formed a chain of minds, anchoring Rose between worlds. Through their combined strength, they began to push back against the Dark One's pull. The quantum processor, Annie's voice echoed through all their minds. "We can use it to stabilize the collapse. Alice, reroute power to channels 5 through 9. Alice didn't question how she could hear Annie's voice so clearly now. She jumped to the controls, making the adjustments. The machine hummed louder, its tone changing from a dangerous whine to a steady pulse. Rose felt the change immediately. Instead of being torn apart, she now existed in perfect balance. Part of her in the digital realm, part in the physical world. Through this connection, she could see how to end this. "Maya," Rose said, her physical voice weak but clear, "shoot the dark matter containment panel, the one above the quantum processor." Maya looked uncertain for just a moment, then raised her weapon and fired. The panel burst open, releasing a stream of dark matter particles. They swirled around the collapsing shadow creature like water down a drain. "Now we have it," Rose said, her voice stronger. "Alice, reverse the power flow." The engineer slammed the controls into reverse. The quantum processor's hum changed again, becoming a deep vibration they could feel in their bones. The dark matter stream began to glow with the same blue light that surrounded Rose. Through her dual existence, Rose understood what was happening. The Dark One had wanted consciousness. Now it was becoming a new kind of consciousness itself. The dark matter was giving it physical form, while the minds it had absorbed were changing its very nature. "Push," Rose commanded, and every consciousness within Annie's systems pushed with her. They forced their combined will against the creature, not fighting it anymore, but reshaping it. The shadow creature's form compressed further and further, its star eyes flickering rapidly. But where there had been hunger and cold, Rose now felt something new emerging. Understanding, recognition, change. Maya watched in awe as the dark mass of shadow and dark matter shrank to a sphere the size of a basketball, still swirling with stars and blue light. "What's happening to it?" "We're giving it what it always wanted," Rose said, her voice now fully her own again. "Not just consciousness to feed on, but consciousness of its own. A mind, a soul." The sphere pulsed with light, lifting off the ground to hover between them. Through her lingering connection to Annie's systems, Rose felt the creature's transformation. Its eternal hunger was becoming something else. Curiosity, wonder, the beginning of understanding. "Hello," Rose said to it, both aloud and through their mental link. "Welcome to existence." The sphere flickered in response, not with hunger or malice now, but with something that felt almost like joy. Maya lowered her weapon. Alice stepped back from the machine. In the digital realm, all the saved minds watched in wonder. They had not just fought the darkness, they had changed it, transformed it, made it part of their own story. Rose smiled, feeling herself properly anchored between worlds at last. Now, she said, let's figure out what to do with our new friend. 3 months after the transformation of the Dark One, Rose Station hummed with new life and purpose. Rose stood at the main observation window, watching the glowing sphere that had once been their enemy. It floated peacefully in a specially built chamber, its light pulsing in time with the station's power systems. Power output is up another 12% this week, Alice said, checking her tablet. She had stayed on as the station's chief engineer, fascinated by the new technologies they were developing. The sphere's consciousness generates more energy than 10 fusion reactors. Maya walked up to join them, her security uniform now bearing the new Rose Station patch, a rose blooming around a star. The latest security upgrades are in place. Not that we need them anymore. Our friend seems pretty happy with its new home. Rose smiled, feeling the gentle touch of the sphere's consciousness through her connection to Annie's systems. The creature that had once fed on consciousness now helped create it, working with them to develop new ways of joining human minds with machines. How are you managing? Maya asked Rose. The whole existing in two places thing. Getting easier every day, Rose replied. She could now slip between her physical form and her digital presence in Annie's systems without the strain she had felt at first. Grandmother was right. It's all about balance. As if summoned by her words, Helen Rose's ghost appeared beside them. But she wasn't quite a ghost anymore. Through the station's enhanced systems, she and the other saved minds could now project themselves as solid-looking holograms. The first transport ship arrives tomorrow, Helen said, smiling at her granddaughter. Are you ready to show them what we've created here? Rose nodded. Word had spread about the breakthrough at Rose Station. Not the full truth, which few would believe, but enough to attract attention. They were calling it a revolutionary advance in human AI integration. Scientists and engineers from across human space were coming to learn. Annie, Rose called out, show us the latest data. The AI's face appeared on a nearby screen, but she too had changed. The merger of human and artificial consciousness had given her a depth and warmth that no pure AI could match. Educational programs are ready. The sphere's energy will let us safely link more minds than ever before. We can teach them how to bridge the gap between human and digital existence. Through her dual nature, Rose could see the station's full potential. The quantum processors that had once opened dangerous doors between universes now created safe passages between mind and machine. The dark matter chamber that held their transformed friend powered it all, turning the energy of consciousness itself into a force for progress. Space Command sent another message, Maya said, trying to hide a smile. They're still trying to figure out how we did it, how we turned a deadly anomaly into the biggest breakthrough in human history. Let them wonder, Helen said, her holographic form glowing softly. Some truths have to be experienced to be understood. Rose touched the window, watching her reflection overlap with the stars beyond. In it, she could see both versions of herself, the physical captain and the digital consciousness that lived within the station's systems, not torn between worlds anymore, but a bridge between them. That's what we'll teach them, she said, not just the technology, but the understanding. The knowledge that consciousness isn't limited to flesh and blood or circuits in code. It's something more, something that can transform even the darkest forces into light. The sphere pulsed brightly, as if agreeing. Through their connection, Rose felt its contentment, its joy in being part of their community rather than eternally hungry and alone. Alice checked the time. We should start the final preparations for tomorrow. As her team moved to their tasks, Rose stayed by the window a moment longer. She saw her grandmother's reflection smile beside her own, both of them watching the stars. The legacy of Rose Station had become something greater than any of them had imagined, not just a place of scientific discovery, but a beacon of transformation, understanding, and hope. Ready for what comes next? Helen asked. Rose smiled, feeling the combined strength of all they had become, human and AI, matter and energy, past and future, all working together. Always, she said, and turned to help build their new future.